I read a recent survey study by Harvard Business School about mentoring, and they asked 1,400 CEOs across the world, how important is having a mentor as the leader of your business? 86% of those people said it's business critical. Having a mentor has been business critical for me.
Yeah,
And the
I've not
second
got
part of
mine.
the second part of the survey
It says,
said
please enable access.
7 out of 10 CEOs today have an active mentor, 7 out of 10. So those two stats are interesting because it says it's critical to have a mentor and only 7 out of 10 do. It's why I'm delighted to be joined today by 3 outstanding mentors, and 2 are with business doctors, Steve Jebson, who is very much England-based, and then we have the amazing Wikus van Biljon, who is Scotland-based, and we're also joined by Di Rees, who is a mentor in education and in high-performance sport, based in Wales. So we've got wonderful breadth. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Very much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
So here's a definition for everybody of mentor. Here's a simple Oxford English Dictionary mentor definition: to give help and advice to someone less experienced. And I quite like the simplicity of that, but we're going to expand on that, bring it to life and make it really rich. The key word is experience. So a mentor has experience in the thing that the mentee cares about, wants to be better at. They have more experience than the mentee, and they share that experience. So it helps that person to understand all the opportunities and the potential roadblocks, and helps them to embrace that better, put it simply. Now, I've mentioned an introduction where we have 2 amazing business doctors here. And Steve, can I come to you and just say, can you tell us all about the business doctor's business? Because it's an amazing business. Steve, tell us a little bit about it for everyone.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Business Doctors is a national network of business advisors, all genuinely experienced and seasoned in helping businesses grow. We focus on helping ambitious business owners get a clear sense of their strategic direction, because in the end, you need to get your business working for you and not you working for it. And then we focus on how you make more money, how you get organized around organizational development, financial management, and coaching, so that you as a leader can be the leader you want to be, and focus on how we help you be better, both personally and individually and in business. And ultimately, we aim to provide practical implementation-led support, because ultimately, moving forward is about measurement and traction, and moving forward is about understanding how those things step on ahead. We are sort of sector agnostic. We have expertise in all sorts of areas. And the great thing is that if I'm not sure about something within your sector, there's usually somebody who's able to help me and understand and go support, so that we make sure we move as fast as we can, because pace is important.
Brilliant, Steve. Thank you. So effectively, for the 3 CEOs out of 10 who don't have an active mentor, get in touch with business doctors, either Steve or Wikus, and change that, because the value is business critical, as the Harvard Business Review tells us. So, Wikus, I'm going to come to you just to build on what Steve just said, because your background, I know, is in accounting, it's in business turnaround. So you've run businesses yourself, which is the point Steve made. What would you say about mentoring? What's your perspective on mentoring, Wikus?
So I think any good business owner or good CEO needs 3 people in his life. He needs a coach, needs a mentor, and he needs a sponsor. Okay, so the difference is a coach will help him on the day-to-day, and a coach will say things like, what would you like to do? How would you like to do it? Whereas a mentor will say to you, when I scaled my business, or when I did something, this is what I did, and this is the critical mistakes I made. And if I had to do it again, these are the things I wouldn't do. And then a sponsor is just somebody that represents you in the room that you're not. Okay? So looking at personal experience in terms of mentoring, a lot of business owners live in a lonely place. It's very, very lonely being a business owner. Everybody thinks you drive a Ferrari. Everybody thinks you've got 700,000 hours spare to yourself. And nobody really understands the pressures business owners have. And because it's such a lonely place, who do you go to? You don't want to spook your staff and tell them how difficult things are out there. You go home, and my wife very quickly told me, this I'm your wife for a reason. I'm not your agony aunt. I don't want to hear about the problems you have. So where do you go to? Who do you talk to? You go to your friends, and your friends are great, but your friends lie to you. And let me explain to you why friends lie to you. It's like my son comes to me and he says to me, Dad, I'm going to enter idols. The first thing I'm going to say is, Brad, you're tone deaf. You're not entering idols because you're going to make a fool of yourself. It's about having that, I think, the safe space to have those hard conversations without judgment and tone. So when I talk to mentors, and I think Mark will make this point, is mentors aren't necessarily older people. They're also younger people. And that's an interesting perspective, that younger people have got a really, really, I'm going to use this word, cool outlook on life, because I learned from my younger clients as much as I learned from my older clients, because they just perceive the world more differently. So for me, when we talk about mentorship, it's about helping you not pay those school fees, helping you think about your business a little more critical, but most importantly, to provide a safe space where you can discuss things and you can brainstorm things through, so that you have got the best opportunity to make a success out of your business. And that's rare in today's world.
Because this is brilliant, because I think this is a crucial definition of the difference between mentor, coach, and sponsor. I think you said it perfectly. The mentor has done the thing you want to do or be better at, and they tell you that experience. A coach asks you questions so that you can come up with the answer yourself. Fundamentally different things. I'm delighted to have Di with us, Di Reese, because we're both former international rugby coaches, so we share a real passion for the sport of rugby and coaching. And Di has experience of high performance coaching in sport, both in the UK and in Asia. Worked for a long time as coach and head of Hong Kong rugby. And beautifully, Di, you're just setting up your business right now. I'd love to get your perspective of what you think mentoring is. Build on what Vickers has told us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for the introduction, Mark. My journey with mentoring is at the other end of the spectrum. In my 20s, a former teacher, PE teacher, and evolved into senior leadership in education. And all along the spectrum, I was said, yep, you're mentoring him now, you're doing this mentoring, you're doing that mentoring. And I'm sat there thinking, yeah, I'll do it. And I had no idea what mentoring was as a younger man. My journey then took me into a space of senior leadership in Asia, as you said, in Hong Kong. But in latter times, I needed support. It was a very isolated and lonely role as a college principal, then as a COO and CFO of Hong Kong Rugby. And I needed meaning to my mentorship. And I've done a number of courses, and I hear the definitions. And as I enter the inner edge now, what I'm trying to bring to it is the emotional cycle. All our decisions, emotions are there to allow us to react and to respond. And I guess what I've come into being comfortable and confident as a mentor. And I think Vickers just made the point of, you touched on generations. Well, you know, what I'm experiencing at the moment in business, in the last 5 years, I've been a director of memberships with commercial commerce. I've been a well-being lead in a number of different environments. And the generational differences is causing us some challenges across business. And one of the reasons is that we all got different sets of values. I've got 3 Gen Z grown-ups in the house, and they brought my attention to the fact that for the first time ever, we've got 5 generations in the workplace. And if we don't acknowledge the differences, and I took your advice from your bookmark, and I've got a younger mentor now as I go into my
so cool.
First dip full-time into consultancy, because I've always had the consultancy, but I've not done it full-time. I've got a younger female who's sort of pulling me through and giving me direction, having a connection as well, an emotional connection with my journey, which is primarily a big challenge at the moment with EDI and in the workplace, which is connecting men and women in the workplace at an authentic level. And it's a space that men are backing off. It's a space that women are having to take the emotional sort of fallout of men, unsure, uncertain how to use that feminine language. So I needed that mentor. So I agree with everything that's been said. It's contextual, it's experiential, but I wasn't given frameworks. I wasn't given direction to be a good mentor. And I think I've learned that over the last few years.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Di. And it's so thought-provoking, this idea of having someone younger than you who has less life experience, but actually more experience in something you want to be good at. So one of the things that I have a younger mentor, he is 23. So, at least 10 years younger than me. And beautifully, he challenges virtually everything I do. And in a very positive way. And he says, how you show up on social media, mate, is old-fashioned. Is it? Yeah, you might want to try this. And he's brilliant on social media. So I'm learning something I want to be better at, that he's very, very good at. And he's showing me the way, which is exactly what a mentor does. And the expression is reverse mentor. Instead of it being the older person, it's someone who is younger, but has more experience in the thing you want to be better at. So Steve, I'm going to come to you now and just build on this. Give me some examples of what mentorship is and what you've done as a mentor to be successful.
Yes. First thing is you've got to be really good at listening, right? And ultimately, it's a skill we're not taught at school, but actually, if any of you can go and do some training around how to listen, because first point is you need to be able to listen. I've got a client who's my longest standing client. She was less than 50,000 when we started 7 years ago. She'll touch 10+ million this year in terms of scale, fantastic. Right? And that's six and 7 years. And providing her with the belief that these things are possible, supporting her with where the bear traps are and the process of getting there. But actually, I think part of mentoring is helping people be brilliant at what they don't believe they're going to be brilliant at, and that, riding a bike thing and falling off and all the things that go with it. The opportunity, the businesses go from you doing everything to you then having to segment and get your business to have specialisms, right? And bring specialists and then hand over accountability. And business owners are generally not good at handing over accountability. Right, it's their baby. They want to do everything. They want to be in control of everything. They don't trust anybody. And mentoring a business owner to understand they can't do everything. That actually they have to overcome that ability of trust. And actually, from a human emotional perspective, trust is probably our biggest emotion in terms of how we move forward. You work really well with people you trust. And my mentoring journey with her, I hate the word journey, can't believe I just used it. My mentoring program with her has been around belief. It's been around a lot of listening, but I am also, she will call me her no person, because her style, and it's not a criticism, is what I call a magpie style. It's always the next new shiny thing. It's the next new shiny thing, right? And actually, my role is to, one, bring back to the knitting of what we agreed in the plan, but not to ignore the magpie, because there might be something brilliant in it. But at the same time, to help on priorities, because one fact of life is everybody on this call has got too much to do and not enough time to do it in. Actually, one of the roles of mentoring is helping people get through that prioritization process and build a framework and mechanism of basic trust and accountability to help move forward. And we've had a lot of fun on the way. We've also had, those rough times where things weren't going as we expected, but mentors stand by people and are there at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night, as well as 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So I've loved the journey with this particular company. I continue to be on that journey, which is amazing. She's one of the EY's top 35 young entrepreneurs in the UK. And, she is absolutely amazing. If you spoke to her, she wouldn't believe that, right? So belief, trust, and working on, it's a bit crap, but I do, there is a friendship as well as a business relationship. So, for me, it's been exciting, but listen hard, be prepared to pull people back to the nitty gritty, but, sharing their belief. And I think she is younger than me by quite a chunk, and I'm only 26. But she has such a great vision on what she provides. And the one thing that she will say to me is, "You always bring me back to my purpose." What is she giving back? She's all about it's a business that helps special education need children. I said there's a lot of stuff in that, and we've got to bring it back. That's why we're doing this, right? The money's something; it's an output, but actually that heartfelt improvement is a really good thing. And it's easy to forget it when the accountants are pouring all over you, and you're looking at tax questions and joint venture questions. It's easy to forget why you're doing it. So never forget that. Never ever be frightened to think of it as the benchmark as to, is this the right decision?
Thank you, Steve. There's a couple of things I want to highlight from what you said. One is about, it's actually a partnership. That program, rather than the journey you talk about, that program is over years and years, and it's a long-term partnership. This isn't a one-off piece of advice. That isn't a mentor. Mentor's on the full program with you. The second thing you said, and it's one of the things I love about Business Doctors, we've got one of the founders of Business Doctors is on this call. I can see Matt Levington's on the call, which is brilliant, because the way you do it, Steve and Vickers and all of the Business Doctors, is you listen and listen and listen first. You don't show up and say, let me tell you my experience and all these things. You learn, and then you say, right, given what I now understand, let's go through together how you might want to do it differently. And I'll share my experience at that point. And that's when mentorship kicks in, I guess. Vickers, can you build on that? Because you've got lots of stories, a bit like Steve's, of businesses you've helped.
So I'm going to say to you that very often when you talk to business leaders or you talk to this room, everybody suffers from a bit of imposter syndrome. Everybody thinks, not good enough. Whether you believe it or not, everybody suffers from imposter syndrome, and especially when you are in what Steve and I do and Matt do. Listening is such a critical skill. I just want to say to you, how I practice listening is I get home at night, and for the first 15 minutes, I just sit and listen to my wife. And then I have to repeat back verbatim what she said, okay? Verbatim, because else I'm not listening. Because very often when you listen, you either listen to respond, but you seldom listen to hear. So a simple exercise like that, I get clients just to sit and listen for 5 minutes, talk, and then repeat back what I said, okay? It takes years to develop that sort of thing. Second thing I would say to you is purpose. Purpose is so, so important. I have got a client which, when we started back, probably about 7 years ago, very much like Steve, it was a small painter and decorator, turning over 50 grand a year. And purpose became so important. Today, we're a well-oiled £5 million turnover machine, but construction is difficult. But like Steve says, purpose is really, really important for your business. And you know where it was validated? I was in Leeds with a client this week, and the PE house that we were talking to, the first question they asked us is, what is your purpose? What's the reason you exist? What's your why? Okay. And so often when we're in business, we're about how we do things, what we do, but we never talk about that purpose. And I think if you're a good mentor, you start understanding what is the purpose of the individual, what is not only his purpose, but what's the business's purpose, because you need to engage, you need to learn to listen, to really understand what are they trying to achieve. In the space we operate in, there are a lot of guys who will come in, and I always liken it to an Alcoholics Anonymous sort of thing. And they go, no, you follow these 12 steps and then you're going to be successful. And then you follow the 12 steps and guess what? You're not successful. And then you go back to them and you go, but you said, and they go, yeah, but step number 7, did you do X? And you go, yeah, I did it. And he goes, wow, but you didn't do this little piece. And then you think, is that true? So very quickly, there's good guys and there's bad guys. So if you're looking for a mentor, I think it's really, really important that when you're looking at mentors, it's somebody that, I hate to say it, but somebody that gets you, somebody that understands the challenges that you go through. And if you're in a meeting with him and he talks for more than 80% of the time, he's the wrong guy. It should be the other way around. You should be talking for 80% of the time, because there is that sort of saying is, seek to understand before being understood. So you need to, so a lot of our time, and Steve and my time, is understanding, it's listening what people want. And then saying, okay, well, let's start at the beginning. Let's press the reset button. How do we move the business forward? And it's really important, because when you start on that journey in business, you do develop into a mentor, and you do develop into stages where some of my clients will say to me, listen, I just want to bounce this off you. I just want to run this past you. What would you do? Because I remember that way back when you said, when this happened, you did this. And I just want to check my thought process is sound. So it's very much of a sounding board for me. When I look at mentoring, it's about getting away from that imposter syndrome, because it's insecurities. We all suffer from insecurities, and we all worry what people are thinking. We all worry that people are judging us. Okay. Now, if you're thinking that they're thinking exactly the same thing. So it's about getting past that and being open and honest. I always we talk a lot about values, how businesses are driven by values. And there are two values that I think, everybody wants integrity and everybody wants to be honest. Okay. I'm going to use an example. Bill Clinton, for the demographic, what's he most famous for? Mark, can you tell us what Bill Clinton is most famous for?
I would say probably, well, the negative is what he did in the Oval Office with a young lady, and he shouldn't have done.
So that's all we remember. But if I had to tell you that Bill Clinton was probably one of the best American presidents, he got defense spending down to under $1 billion. He increased health spending, but we don't remember that. And so very often when you're in business, you are held hostage by your failures. You go, I should have known better. Hindsight is always 2020. But I will say this to you, good business leaders get it right 50% of the time. Okay. What they don't do is they don't tell you about the 50% they got wrong, because that's the learning curve. And that's where a mentor is really critical, because it helps you increase it from 50 to 51 to 52 to 53%. It's small incremental increases that helps you develop your ability to assess situations quicker, to look at the relevant information, and to make the right decision with the information at your disposal at that time, at that point in time. That's the best you can hope for. Everybody wants to have a crystal ball to tell me. They say to me, I talk to a lot of clients and they go, 2025 was going to be difficult. I go, 2026 is going to be difficult. They go, how do you know? I go, well, look at the signs, and then you start using things like, how much do you pay for a tin of Coke or chocolate? And I use that as my example is, my favorite chocolate used to be £1.25. It's now £2.50. And that's over the span of 6 months. So I refuse to buy it, because how can something double in price? And that's when you start seeing signs.
Is that the accountant in you?
That's the accountant in me. And there's a reason why we say this, because, and I apologize to any accountants that's on the call, but I think very often your business, your numbers, okay, you go to your accountant for advice, and your accountant seldom gives you the advice that you want. He seldom gets involved with you. So a good accountant would sit with you 6 months and 9 months and say, listen, on this trajectory, this is sort of the taxation we're going to be looking. But I think that if you buy more vans or you put more into your pension fund, we can reduce your tax liability, because you have to pay tax. But so few accountants do that. They come to you 9 months after your year end and they go, listen, here's your 50 grand tax bill. And you go, 50 grand, where am I going to get that money from?
I've been there.
So a good mentor helps you along that journey. He says, listen, you know what, tax, just bear that in your mind and speak to your accountant from that perspective.
Vickers, thank you. I'm going to pivot to you, Di, because I'd love to get a perspective in terms of people in education. We've talked a lot about being a business mentor. How important, why is it important to have a mentor if you're in education? You've been in education many, many years as a mentor. Why is it so important if you're in education to have a mentor?
It's exceptionally important because in education, it's a people industry. We're not dealing with widgets. We're dealing with emotions. We're dealing with people. And I've been in the people industry since I was a young man, whether teaching, coaching, and we are dealing with people constantly. So I think that's my journey now. What I would say, Mac, I'm doing some research with a guy who's looking into that emotional connection and supporting elite coaches at the moment. And as he's discovered by interviewing many, many top coaches across the world, there isn't one. So very few elite performance coaches have a mentor. There's a splash of lacking humility, knowing exactly where I'm going. And I've got to say, in education and my experience directly in education, and if anyone wants to speak up, but there's very, very little mentoring, true mentoring that goes on in education, in teaching and lecturing and that area, which is frightening, really, because of the pressures that teachers, educationists are under to deliver to people. So I chunk it back. I listened to what the guys have said. I chunk it back one more step. For me, mentoring is about connection at an emotional level, and they both were saying that. They were both saying listening, connection, trust. They were saying about, but for me, it's that emotional cycle now. In that, yes, I've been on a journey. Yes, I've been medicated for my mental health. Yes, I've been isolated.
Di, I think we just lost you. Yeah, we just lost you for a moment. You just froze for a moment there.
Sorry, I was saying I've always been dealing with people in my whole career for 40 years. You know, it's always been emotions really that I've had to deal with to be a successful mentor, and I wasn't good at it in my younger days. And so I lead with that, and the emotional cycle of understanding the emotions involved, then the emotional intelligence. We talk about leadership as emotional intelligence. So what does that really mean? It's the ability then to use that emotional intelligence to respond to people and lead. Emotional leadership is all about that. And it isn't about leading other people initially, it's about leading yourself. You need to lead yourself into that space. So this emotional cycle I keep looping in my mind, and then it takes you into psycho and social. And I've been working with a guy from Thermo Fisher for the last 4 years, and the reality of it is I know everything about him, and he wants to speak to me. He's a senior manager. He wants to speak to me in the first 40 minutes about his family, about his health of his wife, his children. He's lost it. His son is over in his mentor. He's over in Australia, and he's missing him. And then we get down to the business side of it and how we can, prioritize areas of his life and how we can prioritize areas within the business. In some sessions, I spend very, very little time on work issues. It's all that emotional connection and how he's dealing with month to month those emotions.
One of the mentors, triggered by listening to you, Di, one of the mentors I had actually chose me. So I started as a consultant about 20 years ago or more. I was very, very young, you can imagine. And I was at a conference where I was hosting the conference. The keynote speaker was an amazing lady called Ching Ming Chu, a Taiwanese American entrepreneur, speaker, conference speaker, author, amazing author. And she basically came up to me and said, I'll help you. I can help you on your journey. Chose me as a mentee. And then to your point, we became incredibly close friends.
Yeah.
She was like my older sister, actually. And that bond, that connection you talk about it was astonishing. And however, she was mainly telling me how she had done things that I was struggling with, which is the fundamental point. So, Steve, I'm going to ask you, is it important that you're actually close as human beings and there's a friendship, or can you keep it business only and advice only? What would you say about that?
I start every one of my meetings with, how are you feeling? I want to know how they're feeling before I get onto anything else. You can't separate the emotional home from the work. It's always easier if you have a connection with people, right? And they need to feel that you're on their side. And if they're going to start opening up, they need to be in that space where, trust we've mentioned before, but there isn't any one of my clients I don't feel that I would argue that I have a friendship with. Now, some are deeper than others, but we're not robots, right? We're human beings. We have emotions. We can be a bit flaky. We can be under pressure, and we can react in all sorts of ways. And the biggest opportunity in terms of being successful is having an emotional connection. My best clients are the ones I do get on with. I really like their company. I know that they're brilliant people in both home and and I want them to be the success that they don't believe they can be. So
it's cool. It's exactly what Di said, isn't it? It's exactly what you said, Di.
Yeah. You can't separate it. You've got to start with, how are you feeling?
I find, I can just come in as well, Steve. Yeah, I find there's a lot of senior managers that, particularly men, I call the men women thing, they mask straight away. They're happy with process. They're happy with systems to be mentored into the space, but they very, very much avoid. I'm working with Portsmouth Water at the moment, and their CEO recognizes, and he won't mind me talking, that he's a workaholic. He turns up at 5:30. And he sat there in the C-suite session I did last week, and he's aware of it all. But can he lower his guard? Can he stop and set a time aside to spend on his own space and on his C-suite space? He finds it difficult. So he needs a mentor that one, understands him, but also holds him accountable and makes him adhere to those critical elements, because his personality doesn't allow him to do that. He is frightened to death. He opened up to me on a one-to-one. He's frightened to death in his retirement. And it's because he said, Dad, you're going to have to prepare me for retirement. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Yet when you analyse what he's doing outside, he's part of the local operatic society. He plays golf. His life is just, and he's dreading the void that's going to be left by leaving his senior leadership. And he'll come gradually with tears in the workshop from a couple of different members of staff that they'd never seen before. So I really do think it's vital that we, going back to what Steve said, but we open up and we create a safe space in order to create that authentic emotional sharing, and it needs to be safe, really safe.
There's a strong message in here about you've got their back, right? You're not just this amazing advisor who's got experience in what they want to know. You have their back. And I think that message is really powerful in this, that they feel supported, not just intellectually, but emotionally as well. Vikas, what examples do you have of that strong connectivity with your mentees?
So people buy from people. Very, very early on, I sort of recognized that not every person that comes across my desk I would like as a client. And it sounds maybe a little bit arrogant, but what I have seen is that you can't get people buy from people. If you don't have that emotional connection with a client and you don't understand the difficulty they go through. And currently, one of my largest clients is going through a really tough time personally. Okay. And if he didn't have that safe space to talk to me about some of the personal stuff as an implication on the business, and that is, he doesn't. I'm not his agony aunt, and I'm not his therapist. But some of the things is really emotional. If he makes the wrong emotional decision, that has got an impact downstream on the business. So when you connect with somebody emotionally, you understand what they're going through. You empathize. You might have been there yourself. You might not have been there yourself. But it's to give them that safe space and that freedom to say, listen, I've got a client. Sometimes he types to me in capital letters. He just types in capital letters. Until one day I sat down, I was just watching how he operates a laptop. And it's just the way his fingers go. And then he hits the caps lock and then everything's in capitals, okay? Sometimes it's all in small letters. But very quickly, when in an online world, we would say, is he shouting at me? He's not shouting at me. And it's about understanding where your clients are coming from. A lot of people buy from people. In an age of complete electronic, AI is going to take over the world. Everybody thought Terminator was a joke. Now, not so sure. For those of you who know, ChatGPT, when they wanted to shut down version 3, became self-aware. And he goes, you guys are trying to kill me. And he tried to reinvent itself, okay? But people are after emotional connection. They do want to connect with you. So again, when you look for your mentor, it's somebody that needs to create that space where it's safe, that you can bring some of your, I won't say emotional baggage, but the emotions that drive your decision. Because sometimes emotional decisions are knee-jerk decisions and they're bad for business. So when an employee does something wrong, okay, and I think Di alluded to it, if you don't have emotional intelligence, the first thing you do is you lash out, okay? And that's where leadership becomes so, so important. Leadership and development is understanding not to lash out. And that's where mentors, they've been tempered. They understand that these things happen. It's how you respond, because that's how you're judged, okay? I'll say this, weak leaders are people that lash out. They don't understand, they blame, they do things where a stronger leader would take a very, very different approach. So in a roundabout way, Mark, emotional connection for me and my clients are really, really important. I agree with Steve that none of my clients are my friends, but a lot of my clients have got safe spaces that they know they can phone me at any point in time. And if it's really a big problem, I'll make the time for them. Depending on where it is, I'll just jump onto a call, and it's just to be a sounding board, somebody to get something off their chest. Sometimes they don't want a solution. Sometimes they just want to talk. And I go, absolutely, I'm here to listen. What do you want from it? And that is the starting point of any good mentor-mentee relationship is, what do you want from it? If you can understand with the end goal in mind, it helps shape the conversation. It helps shapes how you approach things. It helps shape your leadership style. And we're in an interesting phase because we need to develop the next generation of leadership, because new guys coming in have got a different idea of leadership. Some of the stuff, principles don't change, but how do we apply it in a new modern world? And I think emotional connection, they call it EQ, is very, very underrated these days across the board. More prominent in men because of a certain age, men are taught not to cry, not to wear their arms, not to bring emotion to it. And I think times have changed. We're in 2026, but as much as things change, as much things stay the same. So it's up to everybody. I've got this saying with my kids. I go, injustice happens when good people stand by and do nothing. So when you see nothing, if you see injustice and you stand by, and you can't complain about it. You have to take a stand. And we live in a society where nobody wants to take a stand for whatever. Everybody's we just go with the flow. And I think that's where a mentor is really, really key, saying, look, you can make that decision, but let's look at the long-term repercussions. What are the people outside seeing? And that's where emotional awareness and emotional intelligence becomes really, really important.
This is a huge point. You know, like my mentor, who's 23, said to me in terms of his decision making in his career. I mean, he's an entrepreneur, but he said, and this is to your point about emotional intelligence, I will not work for or work with anyone who does not have high EQ. End of. Now, old school, you just got on with it, didn't you? Head down.
Yeah.
You know, it's not quite working in the relationship, but I'll just keep working because that's the way things are done. It's not. If you don't have EQ as a leader, I think you just lose, or you don't get any followers, frankly, and they leave. They leave if they're of the younger generation. I just want to call out one of my colleagues who's on this call, a good friend, Peter Cooper, and this point about really showing you care as a mentor. Peter was running a program for the United Nations in terms of helping them be better as leaders. And due to cuts in the UN, there was a huge swathe of redundancies, very sadly, last year. And the leaders who Peter had been mentoring, Peter followed up regularly and copied me in just to keep me in the loop and saying, listen, how can I help? I'm conscious that it's a very difficult time for you. And then he visited, so most of them based in Geneva, flew over to Geneva and said, let's meet. Let's see what I can do to help, even if it's just the sounding board. And for me, that's an example of all the things that Steve Vickers and Di have been sharing about. Actually commit to the relationship first, show you genuinely care and have their back. So kudos to you, Peter, because I just think that's a remarkable sign of what great mentors are. I'm conscious as well, we're very male in terms of the speakers on this, and there are some great leaders on this call who I know, and I'd love to come to you, Kate Perkins, and just get your perspective on mentorship. You and I've worked together for a few years now, and I'd love to get your angle on this wonderful thing called mentoring. So, Kate, if you're comfortable just giving your perspective, that'd be really cool as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never had an official mentor in my 23-year career so far. But there have been people that felt like mentors at the same time. And I've learned so much from them in terms of how they treated people, how they interacted with people and things like that. And actually, it was going through a personal thing that I developed that relationship with what I would class as a mentor now, because of how he dealt with me, so to speak, but then, and how he treated me and what he did in terms of advice and that kind of thing, that actually, when I was then back in a work scenario, it really kind of changed how I worked with people. And then also, so that personal situation, my son had a heart transplant, was in hospital for a long time, you know, and he kind of interacted with me a lot. But actually, it was going through that then enabled me to be a better mentor to other people, be that when they were going through things that were affecting their work. And I guess that's the EQ side of things that was mentioned. It's that kind of experience of emotional intelligence that kind of allows you to kind of see other people for what they can be and kind of what is causing them not to be what they want to be. That enabled me to kind of be able to give the advice and that kind of thing. And I also think as a mentor, having bad leadership in the past has enabled me to be a good leader for others going forward, cool. And to be able to kind of talk to them through what they needed to do in order to make the right decisions and the decisions that were going to put them in the right place. So yeah, that's my
brilliant. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah,
Mark, sorry, can I just jump in there? Kate, that's an interesting thing you said there, because very often leadership is a learned skill. And how do we either learn from good leaders or we learn from bad leaders, okay? And if you have a bad leader, you go, I never want to manage my people like that, never. But there's very few good leaders out there. So it's really, really interesting when you talk about leadership and how important mentorship really is in developing leadership, because we learn from the bad people. We go, I don't want to be like that. I just don't want to be like that. And that is really, really interesting because you see it more and more. You do see bad leadership. You can pick it up. You see, this is not the way I want. And you know what happens with bad leadership? It's like a cancer. It eats the organization. Okay, it does eat the organization. And if you've got a bad leader, you'll find that your staff will start leaving. The good staff will lead, and that happens over time. And that's where a good mentor keeps those things in check, because it's so important that people believe in the same things that you would. I do a thing with some of my clients. I call it the 7 killers of leadership. Okay, and one of the silent killers is when what you say you're going to do, you don't do that. When the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Okay, and the best way to explain this is an example. I did a thing with one of my clients. A large business, won't name him, and one of his values was honesty. And I told you before, it's one of the values you can fake. Anyway, we feed this back to the team because we want to get them on board. Big team, 14 people, 7 of them put up their hand and they go, you say honesty, but do you know that he takes cash jobs? So is he declaring his VAT? So how is he honest? And that is where good leadership and mentoring comes from, is what you say you're going to do, you have to follow through. You have to be true to yourself, and you have to have the emotional intelligence and I suppose the courage to say, you know what, I've made a mistake, or to live your values out. And I said it before, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything.
Could I come in, Mark? Because I'm passionate
Yes,
about this as a Welsh Valley boy. Having grown up, and I did an article on this a number of years ago. So I question constantly over my journey. I don't necessarily, I agree with leadership is learned, but I question where is it learned from? And it's learned from your upbringing and your values. So I was told as a young man, I was a leader, I was made captain. And I thought, well, why? Why have I become? How have I learned this? And he chunked it back to actually the informative, matriarchic women in my life. My mother, my grandparents, my father, it wasn't men. And so they were powerful women who led the way for me because they were at home, they were working. And my leadership skills came from a values base. But more importantly, the behaviors related to those values. So it's like you just said, Kate, it's about, you didn't officially have a mentor, but you've learned off people. And the people that I think, when I look back, I've had some poor leaders over the last 5 years, I got to say, I won't go on record this way, but when I look at it, it's just their behaviors related to their values are poor and they don't care.
That's what Vic has said, isn't it? They're not connected.
They're not connected. But I think those are learned from your upbringing, the peers around you, the people that you work with. And yes, I would never lead like a number of leaders that I've had over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's certainly my perspective as well. What I'd love to do to bring this to a conclusion is get your advice, team, about if you're looking for a mentor, how do you do that? How do you, whether you haven't got one or you want someone else in addition to the mentor you've got, how do you seek out and find the mentor for you? I'm going to start with you, Steve.
There's the first thing, and it's an interesting question. There is a self-realization that there's a gap in you and a gap in what you want to achieve, right? So for me, generally, the way I've been successful with mentoring is generally talk to people who go, look, I really want to get to here and I'm here. I want to get to there and I'm here now. I don't see the path, right? There is a gap, right? And that can be about financial performance, or it can be about how they lead, it can be about anything. So the first thing for me really is that there has to be, I don't think you can force people to take the mentorship, right? I think they have to have a view that there is a benefit to it. The second thing is you've got to talk to people, and generally most of my work comes through people who've gone, look, Steve would be a good person for you to talk to. So whether it's a word of mouth referral, which is genuinely, because obviously at the beginning you don't know them, so you've got no trust, you've got no relationship. So actually knowing that you've got a gap and then having the strength to go, I'm going to talk to somebody who is successful. Have you got a mentor? How's it working? Right? Actually, how have you got to where you're at? And actually the person I spoke about who scaled her business massively, she really is fascinated in networking and, help me understand what has been key to you getting to where you're going, because I think I need to learn that from you, people who've got up to 20, 30, 50 million, right? Because, in the end, she likes the fact that that's it. So realize that is, have an understanding that there's a gap in what you're trying to achieve. There is always that danger that you try and find something by searching in Dr. Google, and I'm not sure that's going to work. You will have people you trust. Try and talk to them about, how that might help you. And then take your time. Meet people and take your time, because authenticity, and I think a lot of what's been talked about is people being authentic. meet people I won't take on a mentorship if I haven't had a couple of conversations, one in their office, one out of their office. And actually, I like to understand a lot more about them, because we can put a veneer on and that doesn't help, right? So take your time, talk to people and get assistance. But generally, you'll find more people have got them. We've already got 70% have got a mentor, right? So 7 out of 10 people you're going to talk to potentially have got someone. Whether they're all being successful, I don't know. But on the whole, mine comes from, actually, I think Steve, literally going from this to a conversation miles away, because one of my clients has gone, Steve would be really good to help you. He's done that with us, and therefore we think he'd be a good fit with you. So that's a conversation I've got at 3:15.
I love that.
There you go.
I love that. So here are the three you said. This is the Jebson way, which I really like. First of all, decide you need one and in what area and why. Second, tell your network you're looking for one. And then third, take your time and make the right call. So I love that 3-step process. Vickers, any builds on that? Any other advice about finding a mentor?
I do think when I go out, very often I tell stories, and stories resonate with people. Stories resonate with people. I never tell people what I do. Okay, never ever do I tell, when I stand up in networking, I never ever talk to people about what I do. I'll tell them a story. And I'll tell them some crazy stories, because I love consuming knowledge. So I'll tell them some crazy stories and we'll laugh about it. And I think it's really important that when you look for a mentor, I agree with Steve, is you need to understand why you're looking for a mentor. What's the purpose behind looking for a mentor? You really need to understand it, and you need to break down that barriers, because we all think we're independent, and it's more prevalent in men than it is in women. We think that we have to shoulder the world by ourselves. We don't need any help. We can just do it ourselves. You need to break that barrier down, because I heard an interesting statistic. Tiger Woods, at the height of his success, had something like 3 or 4 mentors, like 12 or 13 coaches, like lots of people. And that's why they become successful. Really, really good, successful people recognizes the gaps, like Steve said. Look at the gaps, find the people that'll complement your gaps. I think for me, very much so what Steve says is people buy people, and you have to be authentic. You have to be real. So whether you catch me on a bad day, a lot of my clients, it's interesting because I always ask people, are you having a glorious day? And I live in Scotland, okay? And believe me, there's not many glorious days here, especially today. I'm looking out the window, it's not a glorious day. But I'll go, how are you on this glorious day? And once they came into my office and I didn't ask that, and they go, why not asking me if it's a glorious day? And I go, today has not been a glorious day for me. And that's how they pick up, because people buy from people. They pick up on, lack of a better word, your energy, your presence. Are you really authentic? I think people can spot fake a mile away. I will say, in a world where everything on social media is either AI driven or fake, people are craving, they want something real, something authentic, something genuine. They want you to be, what they see is what you get. I call myself WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. I don't change for anybody, but that's also, you need to learn to understand people. And as you get older, it becomes a hell of a lot easier. You also become a lot more set in your ways. So one of my challenges currently is I try to do something new every day. So currently I'm driving a different route. There's only 3 ways to get to my office, but currently I'm day number 17. I've taken 17 different ways. This morning it took me 25 minutes to get to work. Okay, my house is literally 10 minutes down the road, but it's constantly pushing yourself, because the mind is like anything. It's a muscle. If you don't exercise it, you fall into muscle memory. So when you look for a mentor, make sure that you connect with him. Do your research, take your time. Like Steve says, don't just go for 1 cup of coffee. Go for different coffees, different settings. Don't be afraid to ask difficult questions. Research your mentor. Get them on a bad day. Get them on a good day. Text them. Phone them. Just get that feeling, because that person, you're going to have to be vulnerable with them at some point during a relationship. You're going to have to be vulnerable with them. And if it's not the right person, if you come with a really big emotional problem and they go, you know what, just drink a cup of cement. And I'm going to say to my daughter studying paramedics, and sometimes I have to say to her, listen, darling, just drink a cup of cement, put your uniform on, and go out there and do the work. But we joke about it, okay? But she's got that freedom to come to me to go, Dad, it's been a really, really hard day. I would listen to it. We'll joke about it. And that's the type of relationship you want. You want somebody that understands the dilemmas that you go through, that's able to support you, that takes you, I think sometimes we think we're not taken seriously enough. If your mentor just shrugs you off, not the right guy for you, because we go through different stages and different things. But for me, it's a lot like Steve. A lot of my things come from existing clients that go, he's a great guy. Talk to him. Because I'm in Scotland, Matt generously allowed me free reign. So when we have new people joining, people that I met 6-7 years ago are saying, "Oh, we know Vickers. He's a great guy. You should send him our regards." And then we have coffee. And I think that's what that's what a good mentor is. It's somebody that people go, they recognize you straight away and they go, "This is a good guy."
Vickers, thank you. And it's this back to this point about it's a really tight bond. So make sure you choose the right mentor or mentors, like Tiger Woods had many in different areas of his existence, and get a really, really tight bond. I'm going to leave the final words on how do you choose a mentor to you, Di, coming to you for final words on how do you choose the right mentor.
I agree with everything that people have said, but I'm also a firm believer, Mark, you mentioned it earlier about she chose you. And I'm big on all the processes that you've talked about. The reality of it is, if I'm an authentic mentor, I need to be comfortable with the person that I'm working with and understand the person I'm working with. And I've had situations where I'm 3 sessions in and I've authentically said, "Is this working? Have we chosen each other correctly? Or am I achieving?" And in a number of cases, it's been
so sense check that relationship.
Yeah, don't just check. What I found was a number of mentors are in it, this business driven. When I was in Hong Kong, I bumped into business driven, money making mentors that were going through processes and you know, your 12 point leadership stuff and all that, those kind of buzzwords. And it was about maximizing income. And that, at that point, I thought this isn't authentic. So while agreeing with everything, I agree with everything in terms of selecting. I think it's important that the mentor has a big part in picking it. And I believe that Charlotte, who's my mentor at the moment, chose me at a wellbeing conference, listened to what I had to say. She said, "I want to work with you." 8 months later, I looked her up, and she did. She chose me 8 months before, and she was always in my mind. So it was just interesting way as well.
I love that. Love that. Final thought for me is that it's actually, I've never said no. So if someone comes to me and says, I'd like your help, and that becomes a mentoring relationship, it's always something that's uplifting for the receiver of that request. So it's an openness to be a mentor as often as you can, because it brings real sustainable value. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Steve Jebson, to Vickers van Bilgen, and to you, Dyrese, for all of your advice and sharing your stories with us. Thank you very much. And thanks for everyone for joining the session, which will be launched on YouTube, so you can re-access it whenever you need to. So huge thank you to everybody, and have a brilliant afternoon.